Heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. The story of Syracuse's season has been encapsulated by that one phrase, with the Orange reaching the lowest point since 2007. It's not the season some hoped for, but there's still 2 games left to send super seniors like Brett Kennedy and Brendan Curry off with the bang.
Only very limited time left with the guys, so it's you just got to get back out on the field.
Virginia is that first shot, and we're here on Cuse Countdown to break down how SU can avenge demons of the past. So don't go anywhere. CC starts now.
Welcome into the CitrusTV studio for another edition of Cuse Countdown. Noah Cierzan here with Zach Letson and Joe Puccio to preview SU's matchup against Virginia this Saturday. Now, this is actually the second showdown against the Hoos this season, but it'll be a little bit different for the Orange. Thanks to SU's collapse down in Chapel Hill, Syracuse is officially ineligible for the NCAA tournament. With SU's fate sealed below 500, the Orange missed postseason play for the first time since 2007 and only the second time this century. Now, there's not a program in college lacrosse that has nearly as much tradition as Cuse, which creates sky-high expectations. Zach, how shocking is it for Syracuse to fall so far from the ranks of the elite in such devastating fashion this season?
Noah, it's heartbreaking, devastating, a million adjectives. I don't know if there is enough to describe what it's been for Syracuse this season because, Joe, it's not just because they've lost 8 games. It's the way they've lost 8 games. It's the slow starts. It's the comebacks late to get your hopes up and then rip your heart out right in the dying seconds of this game, of games this season. This is a Syracuse team that has shown some really good flashes but hasn't put it together over 60 minutes, right? That's what Gary Gates says. Execution, putting it together over 60 minutes. Quite frankly, Syracuse hasn't done that in a game this year.
Coming into this season, Coach Gates said this was a bridge year. You know, they are building for the future. But a bridge year doesn't mean you miss the tournament. There's so much talent on this team. USILA All-Americans all along that offensive side and experience on defense. I don't care if it's a bridge year, a rebuilding year, whatever. This is Syracuse men's lacrosse in the Atlantic Coast Conference. There's no reason to miss out on the playoffs because the schedule that SU has to play, it favors them.
Yeah, Joe, 4-game losing streak heading into this matchup against Virginia. It's been disappointing, no doubt about it. But if you ask Gary Gates, there's still some positives to pick up from the rubble.
I look at it as bringing this program back to prominence. You know, the one thing that, that you can do is you can fix the fundamentals, the basics, but one thing this group will pass on and the kids will learn from is to never give up, how to play till the last second, to the final whistle.
So natural for a coach to come up with some good things to talk about even amongst losses, but are you guys buying this at all?
Absolutely not. Did he just say that he's going to pass down playing it to the final whistle? Where have you been the last 2 games, Coach Gate? Your team has lost in the final moments in embarrassing fashion. I don't know where he's getting this from. Coach Gate has a lot of positives to take from this season, but the fact that he said that, playing to the final whistle, that would be the very last thing I would tell the next year's team. Maybe even something that I wouldn't even bring up at all.
No, your team plays to the final whistle. They play with some fight. Who cares? Every team does that. This is a team, sure, they put their heart into it, but they've done anything but close games out. They've done the exact opposite of closing games out. Look at you see here, only close losses, and like you mentioned, Joe, those last 2 right on the precipice, and Syracuse can't get a defensive stop. They play their worst when the game is on the line. If you're Coach Gates, I don't know what you're talking about.
Why not talk about Tucker Dordevic or a great player like that? You have to bring up the fact that they played to the final whistle. That's a bunch more.
Well, you bring that up, Joe. It's been frustrating, especially when the last 3 losses come by a combined 4 goals. But you got some of the most prolific offensive players in the country, like you said, Tucker Dordevic. And despite an extreme lack of clutch genes that they don't have in the closet, this team can flat out score at times, Joe.
They can, and we'll give SU credit here. The talent does show up once in a while. I mean, Dordevic and Curry have really stepped up this season as those big-time players. But when you watch these guys on offense, it is so hard to picture or even dream that Owen Hiltz isn't in this lineup. If he was standing there at X, I think SU would have a lot of success. And while on that same topic, you have to think about Joey Spallina coming in next year to make that offense a little bit better. Again, this is a bridge year. You want to see who you have. SU showed flashes once in a while, but it wasn't consistent. They had to go on scoring runs to get back in games.
Yeah, this is an SU offense that's been ravaged by injuries all year. It's affected things, no doubt about it. Tucker Dordevic has shown, despite the 4-8 record, that's affected nothing with how he's been able to play lacrosse. 3.5 goals a game, that's number 4 in the entire NCAA. And listen, there's other guys, Owen Siebold can get it done. Even the young guys, Jackson Burtwhistle, Mikey Berkman at times, these guys have shown flashes. It's just about putting an entire stretch together. That's what we haven't seen yet, Joe, but we've seen the stretches and the flashes of a team that's really talented on the offensive end.
All right, so that offense, it creates a little bit of a positivity sandwich to start the show. So we'll give you a second to chew on that and hit a quick break. On the other side, we meet the Cavaliers. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back into Cuse Countdown. Noah Cierzan here, back with you alongside Zach Letson and Joe Puccio. It's been a rocky season for the Orange, and the sweet release of the death of the season, it won't come easy. Virginia is next on the docket in what has become one of the best programs of the last 5 years. The Hoos have won back-to-back national championships dating back to 2019, and amazingly, the fall-off hasn't come. UVA is loaded and will be tourney-bound once again. What's not to love down there in Charlottesville, Zach?
Yeah, Noah, this is a team that is the standard of lacrosse the last 2 years. Look, Lars Tiffany took over since it's been a monstrous program, and you look at the team this year, of course, coming off back-to-back national titles. This year, they're off to a better start than either one of those 2 years. A 9-3 record and a team that's got all of those guys back from a season ago, right? Schellenberger, Moore, Cormier. These are guys that are All-Americans, and they could take UVA back to the promised land again this season.
Looking at the Cavs this year, first in points per game in the ACC. They're the best offensive team in the conference. And if you're one of the best teams in the ACC, objectively, you're one of the best teams in the NCAA. Looking at the defensive side of things as well, Virginia has led in the ground ball category for the last 3 or 4 years. They have been hounding teams on the ride. UVA is, as you said, right, the example of what you want to be as a successful college lacrosse program. I wouldn't be surprised if UVA three-peats. That's how good they are.
Yeah, they've got the offense, they've got the defense. Also, didn't even talk about Fogo. Petey LaSala held Jacob Fopp to his worst game of the year in the first matchup, a standout squad. But you can't talk about the rise of Virginia without bringing up the conductor of this orchestra, Lars Tiffany. Since he took over, he's completely reinvented the wheel, turning a middling ACC team into a national powerhouse, Joe.
He really has, and he did the same thing over at Brown, right? We know the Ivy League is a great conference for lacrosse, but because Lars Tiffany went up there to Brown, he proved himself as a solid head coach. I mentioned those ground ball numbers earlier, and it's important because Lars Tiffany prides himself in the ride and the defense. If you hear about the Virginia ride and you're an opposing offense, that's probably the last thing that you want to hear. He coached Brown up to its rise, coached UVA up to its rise, and he has 2 rings to show for it over the last 3 years, and there's only been 2 tournaments in the last 3 years. So shout out Lars Tiffany for really building a solid program down there in Charlottesville.
Yeah, Lars took this program to Mars. This program was nothing before he took it over in the years leading up. You're looking at a team that had 1 conference win in 4 years, no NCAA tournament victories over that time, and had 2 losing seasons in those 4 years leading it, and since 2 national titles, and this guy is doing it again. This is a program of dominance, and like we said, they're the standard because of him.
How long were you sitting on that Mars joke, by the way?
A few days. I had to say, had to get it. It's too good.
Why not?
Well, to get to Mars, he's ridden the stars of this UVA squad, and it's not going to be easy for the Orange. They're hurting for a softball. They're not going to get it with UVA. The Cavaliers are once again a top 10 team, but they're actually far from invincible. After starting the year undefeated, they were dismantled by Maryland about a month ago, and they haven't looked the same since, Zach.
Yeah, this is a team that's had its peaks and its valleys. And look, happened last year, too, to Syracuse. They lost twice and then won the national title. So let's slow down a little bit with hitting the panic meter for Virginia. But look, this is a team, like you said, Noah, they've been a little bit all over the place. They got knocked around by a Richmond team that's, I don't know, kind of middle of the pack. And then, of course, got scorched by Maryland as well. But if anything, that's bulletin board material for a team 2-2 in its last 4 games, coming and facing a Syracuse team that's got nothing to play for.
Yeah, I didn't know losing to Maryland was a blemish on the resume, fellas. I mean, Maryland is the best team in the NCAA, there's no doubt about it. What I'm most concerned about is that they went tooth and nail with Towson. I mean, the only thing that they're good for is hosting last year's Elite Eight. And honestly, I think that Virginia has played some really solid opponents this year. Hasn't come out on top against some difficult opponents. I'm looking at Duke, right? That was a tough loss on the resume as well. We're talking about the number 5 team in the country. I mean, this team is very good. There's nothing to worry about. Zach, as you mentioned about that panic meter, I'm down to like a 1 or a 2. And honestly, I think UVA can make a deep run to Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Not really worried, even though there have been some ebbs and flows with Virginia this season because of their offense, and you're really never going to be out of it given how primetime they are. A big part of that unit, of course, Peyton Cormier. So let's send it over to Joe for more on Cormier's long, winding road to success.
Peyton Cormier was the 26th ranked recruit by Inside Lacrosse when he officially signed with Virginia in the spring of 2018. He was slated to join an elite forward group that consisted of Matt Moore, Michael Kraus, and Ian Laviano. That plan never came to fruition. Cormier suffered a knee injury before the 2019 campaign. As he watched the Cavaliers hoist a championship banner, Cormier stayed determined, but sat on the sideline. When the Canadian returned to the field, his impact was felt. Cormier posted a hat trick in his first career game in 2020 and has been a staple in UVA's offense that this season is 7th in the NCAA in goals per game. What else do you want from a player that's netted nearly 60 goals in 24 career games? The real question is, how does a player go from horrific knee injury to USILA All-American? Well, it's being unique. Cormier has a Canadian box style to his game and can use his savvy hands to win battles in tight spaces. Sounds a lot like the scouting reports of Gary and Paul Gate. Cormier isn't to the level of number 22 and 19 in orange and blue just yet, but number 24 in blue and orange went through trials and tribulations to stand out in one of the nation's best offenses.
Well, Cormier's been going super gremlin this year, but he's only a third of that equation up top. Zach, they've got some monsters.
Yeah, this is someone in Connor Schellenberger, one of the superstars in all of men's lacrosse this season. I mean, look, this is a guy that people say, that Lars Tiffany says rather, is training with more intensity than ever, and you can see it. 5 points in 12 of his 14 games, and yeah, he cut up Syracuse earlier this season. 3 goals and 4 assists in that game. Look, he hasn't been quite himself in this past month, just 1 goal in his last 2 ACC games, but I expect him to bounce back, and him and Moore are described as really the two-headed quarterback, the two-head quarterback of this offense.
Yeah, well, if Schellenberger is the brick, Matt Moore, he's the mortar at the House of Who's. Using his extra year of eligibility, Moore returned for that opportunity at Natty number 3, and despite being banged up at times, he's still putting up 2 goals per game, and he adds another dimension to an already deadly attack unit. Arguably, though, his biggest contribution is the leadership he brings to the table. It's guys like Moore that help connect the offense as a whole that's averaging over 15 goals per game this season to the other part of the equation, the midfield. So for more on the UVA middies and how they open up the offense, we'll send it over to Zach at the wall for a breakdown.
Noah, when you're late to fill the spaces, a Syracuse defensive specialty, Virginia's a team that's going to make you pay. The Orange fall into large deficits early in games because of defensive lapses, and well, UVA is one of the most talented offensive teams in the entire country. Let's take a look at a couple clips from their most recent win against Quinnipiac. Two-way mini Jeff Connor, he's going to get the ball right here outside the restraining line. Sprint in down the right aisle. He's one of the most talented offensive players in the ACC from an assist standpoint. So everyone's looking at him over the center center of the field. But who's waiting up top? Oh yeah, that's just the talented Peyton Cormier, who leads the entire Cavaliers team in goals, completely unattended up top. And well, that might be a little PTSD for Syracuse fans who have been used to watching their defenders watch the ball and not be in position. So Quinnipiac was slow, Syracuse was slow, and well, this trend continued for Virginia over the course of the game. Taking a look at another clip, this is Jack Simmons, who streaks in down the left alley, and this is someone that Lars Tiffany says is one of the most talented guys at making a man miss and running over to the middle of the field. Why don't you take a wild guess at what he's about to do right here? Well, excuse me, right dodge, sprints over the middle of the field, nothing but green grass in front of him, makes it look way too easy, and that's a Quinnipiac team that was slow. If Syracuse is slow, if they're late to fill the spaces, if they're not guarding who they're supposed to, Noah, it's going to be a long day inside the dome.
Zach, Syracuse has already seen firsthand how great that Virginia midfield is. The Who's Mizzy scored 10 goals in that 20-11 rout of the Orange. Hopefully that one is in the rearview mirror. But Joe, when you look at that last matchup, what part of that game were you most concerned about coming into this one?
I was more concerned with the slow start of the game. I mean, UVA started off that first quarter 8-1. And that was a point in time where we still were trying to figure out what this Orange team was. But then we figured out that SU gets out to slow starts. And they did the same thing against Army earlier in the year. I think that going into that first quarter, trailing 8-1, it just put SU behind the 8 ball. And they had to scrap their entire game plan and go out in the second, third, and fourth and try and get back into this game. They did not. And Syracuse needs to find that offensive mojo early on. Like, look at that shot from Dordovic. Why can't SU have that success early on, darting into the slot and getting clean looks? But then this shot from UVA, right? This was just a bad day for SU defensively. SU had its struggles all day in its defensive zone, but getting rippers like that from Lucas Quinn, I mean, there's nothing more you can ask for.
Yeah, this was, well, I guess what I would call it, death taxes and Syracuse falling behind so quickly in games. I mean, this was just a perfect example of a Syracuse team that looked unprepared, that looked flat from an offensive, but especially a defensive end, like you alluded to, Joe. A team that, like you said, they fell down 8-1 early, and they really couldn't get back into control of the game. Sure, they made it a 3-goal game into the third quarter, which the final score wouldn't indicate with it being a 9-goal loss, but Jacob Falk got dominated at the X by Petey LaSala, and defensively, this was a game SU wants to put behind them quickly.
Yeah, that Syracuse offense definitely going to have to step up. We're going to take a quick break. We're actually leaving the CitrusTV studio, but we're not going anywhere. On the other side, we'll have coverage of some high-profile cases in the Countdown courtroom, so stick with us.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hear ye, welcome into the adjudication in session today. I'm your Honorable Judge, Mr. Cierzan, hearing today's cases. Mr. Letson, Mr. Puccio will be arguing on behalf, decorum in this court, arguing on behalf of their clients. And we've got a packed schedule today, so I'm not going to waste any time getting going here. Our first case today features the class of 2022 midfielders suing current Syracuse midfield for fraud based on performance. Mr. Puccio, you are the prosecuting attorney. You may start your argument.
Before I begin, I just want to welcome you to the courtroom. I know it's a very hostile environment, and it takes only the best people to be on here. So I want to congratulate you for earning this role.
Too hostile for a handshake.
Very hostile. I want to talk about this current midfield and how bad it is. I don't really understand what the argument is for Syracuse to have this midfield coming out game after game. The only promising piece is Jacob Buttermore, and he's gone. So that's strictly a recency bias as well, because he's had 6 goals in 4 games. I'm looking at Dylan Sagitter and Carter Kempney. If you're an SU men's lacrosse recruiting fan, you know exactly who those players are. A 4-star long stick midfielder in Sagitter from Long Island. He is teammates with Joey Spallina. His name's also kind of important, just a little bit. And the 5-star Carthage High School's Carter Kempney, a Syracuse kid playing at that short stick midfielder role. Make way for those two. I don't want to see anyone else on the Syracuse roster at the midfield position go up and take jobs from those two.
I mean, this is a classic case of overreaction. Listen, there's a couple midfielders on this team that we're expecting to be back this year that, look, one of them's Griffin Cook, someone who hasn't played during this entire losing streak. Hold on. Been exceptional on the ride for Syracuse this season. He's been out during this entire streak. Then I'm looking at a guy who's played at both attack and midfield, and Jackson Burtwhistle, a guy that didn't play almost the entire season, then comes in, has 2 goals last week, and then 3 goals here in this recent matchup against North Carolina. He's going to be back next year. Let's slow it down a little bit, because this midfield has some talent, and sure, like you mentioned, 5 stars coming in. You got a lot of talent coming in, but at the midfield, I think the future's bright.
Well, thank you for naming just 2 midfielders that are good, because SU needs 2 lines of midfielders that are good. The only way you're going to get that is by bringing in new talent. And thinking of
decorum.
Oh
That's
goodness.
all I'll have from you, Mr. Puccio. Be careful.
I'm
do not
watching
mess
myself
around here in the courtroom. You're lucky, though. The verdict is in, and the plea, or rather the case, is guilty. The SU midfielders are guilty. Congratulations, Mr. Puccio. You win that one. Fraud is the charge for the SU midfield. In our second case of the day, the Syracuse goalies are suing the coaching staff for negligence based upon a lack of attention and love. Mr. Letson, you may start your case.
Mr. Cierzan, you want to know who the real fraud is? It's the coaching staff.
What?
These goalies are not given any confidence by the coaches all season. Okay, Bobby Gavin, yes, he's had his struggles. He hasn't been himself at times this year. But you're going to tell me that you're going to play Harrison Thompson for 8 minutes and then pull him again. Where's the faith? Where's the faith? Show me an example. Show me a single example where you do a little flip-flop, hot potato this, hot potato that, and it works for goalies. If you have 2 goalies that you play on a 50-50 basis, you have no goalies. And this Syracuse team is a disaster because the coaches don't know how to manage them.
What else do you want Gary Gait to do? He's one of the best lacrosse masterminds, and he's got 2 scarecrows of goaltenders. I mean, he has to put in the hot hand. It's been Bobby Gavin as of late. You can go back to CitrusTV and find who the biggest Bobby Gavin supporter is. It's your boy.
Oh boy.
I think Bobby Gavin is a solid goalie. Now, has he been amazing? Has he been like Drake Porter? No, he hasn't. But the thing is, what else is Gary Gait going to do? He doesn't have the backup like Harrison Thompson to come in and take over that role. He just has to be a solid goaltender. Syracuse doesn't have that right now, but where are you going to find one? Are you going to go recruit someone from Christian Brothers Academy? Absolutely not. You have to find someone that's going to be the hot hand. Bobby Gavin's been that guy. I don't know what else you want him to do. Do you want him to strap on the pads? I mean, Coach Gait still has some playing time left in him.
I don't have a gavel, so I'm doing a sassy clap instead. This one, the verdict is coming in, and the coaching staff, Gary Gait, guilty is the verdict. Congratulations, Mr. Letson.
Thank you.
We need a little bit of consistency, a little bit of love for that goaltending group. 1-1 for anybody keeping track at home. Our final case, though, is the Syracuse defense. They're suing the Virginia attack for disturbing the peace in matchup number 1 on the basis of a rowdy behavior and incitement of chaos. Mr. Puccio, the floor is yours.
It sounds really serious. Are we actually going to do this?
Yeah.
All right. Well, defense, good luck to you against Virginia. I mean, I don't really understand how SU is going to stop this potent attack. We've talked about it. Schellenberger, Moore, Cormier. The big 3 for UVA has done a solid job this season. Schellenberger standing at X. Saying those words just scares me as a whole. He's 3rd in the NCAA in assists per game. Cormier is 4th in the ACC in goals per game. UVA's offense as a whole is just at the top of that leaderboard in the ACC. I don't know who's going to be thrown in there. You want to put Brett Kennedy on Schellenberger? Yeah, good luck. He'll just toast them. And now you have 2-on-1s with some bad defenders in the way for SU. I really don't see how Virginia can lose this game offensively because SU's defense hasn't showed us anything so far this season.
No, this isn't a UVA attack. On paper, it's incredible. Don't get me wrong. But let's give the SU defense a little bit of credit here. During that North Carolina game, they had a 20-minute stretch in the second half where they gave up just 2 goals. It's not just the offense that's getting you back in the game and making you make a great comeback. It's the defense, too. And if we want to talk about UVA and all these guys, they're all Americans. Okay, I give you that. That being said, UVA's 2-2 in their last 4 games. Why are they 2-2? They were terrible against Richmond. 6 goals in the last 3 quarters. That's not going to win you a lot of games. And then against Duke, 8 goals for the whole game? For the whole game, Joe. That's not going to get you a lot of wins. So this is an inconsistent offense that's got to put it together. I haven't seen it. You
haven't seen enough from the UVA Cavaliers. They've won 2 national championships because their offense is that good. They've been good this year. I don't know what you're talking about. They have taken down some big. This guy keeps clapping.
2-2.
All right. Give me your best sassy clap. Give me your best sassy clap. Wow. It's a close one. The verdict is in. Mr. Puccio wins this case.
You're lucky.
The defense been
You're
eating
so
too
lucky.
much Swiss cheese because that's what it looks like. I apologize, Mr. Letson, but good job to both of you today.
Am I Dr. Puccio now?
You are Dr. Businessman Puccio.
I'll take that.
Congratulations.
I'll take that any day.
We're going to take a quick recess at this moment in time, but when we come back, we'll wrap things up with our predictions for Saturday's matchup. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back into the CitrusTV studio, winding things down here on Cuse Countdown. Noah Cierzan, Zach Letson, Joe Puccio. We're covering things. Syracuse, of course, they don't have the opportunity to play into late May, but there are still a lot of contenders around the ACC. The one playing on Saturday against the Cuse, Virginia maybe being one of the best. Zach, is there a team that has a higher ceiling in this conference?
It's hard to find one, Noah, because this is a team that's been a model of consistency. They're off to their best start since 2012, when, by the way, they're back-to-back national champs. And this is a UVA team that should be playing at Klockner Stadium when the tourney starts. They should be playing at home because they're that talented.
UVA can run the table easily. Easier said than that. I think that the Cavaliers have been tested, and they've handled that adversity well.
All right, it's time for our predictions. Mr. Letson, you couldn't win in the courtroom, but maybe predictions. Who you got on Saturday?
Give me Virginia 16-12. Look, this is Petey LaSalla, who dominated Syracuse earlier this year at the face-off X. Anyway, we just talked about it. This offense is loaded with All-Americans. They're going to get it done in the dome.
I like Virginia 19-14, but before we give it back to you, Noah, I just want to let you know and let the audience know at home that this is your last show here at Citrus TV. I don't want to be the one to tell you that because you already know it, but I can speak for Letson and a lot of people here at Citrus TV that your impact on the camera, behind the camera, and just around the newsroom, it's been felt by everybody, and we just want to thank you for all the hard work you've done in impacting so many of us.
Man, I appreciate that. Honestly, you're moving me to tears here. I really want to look at you, but I know I'm supposed to look at the camera here. I'll throw out my prediction, 15-13 in favor of the Cuse. I'm going out a bit of a homer. But again, thank you so much. I've had a blast here at Citrus TV and specifically Cuse Countdown, being able to come here and produce as a freshman and sit here as a senior now. So that's all you're ever going to see of me again. So maybe that's a good thing for all you Cuse Countdown viewers, but you'll see a lot more of Zach and Joe in the future. For now, I'm Noah Cierzan for the last time saying so long and have a great night.